He's been called the last American hero, and in many ways, the biography of Junior Johnson is larger than life. Born in Wilkes County in 1931, Johnson burst onto the racing scene 18 years later, finishing second in a preliminary contest at North Wilkesboro. By that time, Johnson was a veteran whiskey runner, hauling moonshine across the South on an almost daily basis. After outdriving federal agents on dark and treacherous roads, racing on sanctioned tracks was easy. Johnson scored 50 checkered flags as a driver, including victories at Daytona, Charlotte, and Atlanta, and turned a number 3 Chevrolet into a state treasure. In 1966, he left the driver's seat and became a team owner. He managed some of NASCAR's greatest drivers over 3 decades and won 3 Winston Cup championships. He left NASCAR in 1995, returning to his farm to raise 2 children with his wife Lisa. Since then, Johnson has launched a legal moonshine business and a new NASCAR team, with his son Robert behind the wheel. Fearless on and off the track, Johnson is a man devoted to his family and mindful of his legacy. Tonight, winning big with Yarborough and Waltrip, leaving NASCAR, a new family, and a return to the track.
This program is made possible by a grant from the A.J. Fletcher Foundation as part of its ongoing commitment to the Biographical Conversations series. The North Carolina-based foundation supports social justice, public broadcasting, education, the arts, and human services throughout North Carolina. And the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting UNC-TV.
Time I was 15 or something, so I was hauling whiskey all over Winston-Salem, Charlotte, High Point, Greensboro. I had a lot of good opportunities to drive fast cars, good cars, and I knew I could make a lot of money driving them cars. I was tough on a car. I ran a car for every inch of endurance or whatever out of it. People tell me how fortunate I was or how good I was or whatever. And my comment to that most of the time, I've been a person that the good Lord gave 9 lives to.
Hello and welcome to the final part of our series of biographical conversations with Junior Johnson. Let's pick it up where we left off last time. Mr. Johnson, thank you so much for sharing all of your time and your experiences with us.
Thank you for having me here.
Bobby Allison did leave Junior Johnson and Associates after the 1972 season. You said years later that if Allison had stayed with you, Richard Petty's records today wouldn't mean anything. What did you mean by that?
Well, our team and his driving was so good together that we would have won 10, 12 races every year and championships one right after another because we had the team that could keep the car together and score the points and stuff to win them championships. I guarantee we'd it'd have been an unbelievable thing. It would have. I still think it's the best team we ever had. Bobby's. I'm not going to say he's as good as anybody I had. I'm not going to say he's better than anybody else I had because I really don't know. But I will say that he's as good as anybody I ever had driving my race car.
Allison's departure meant that you had to find another race car driver. Tell us about the next person you hired, Kel Yarborough. What did he bring to your team?
He brought a fearless type atmosphere and a strong determination of not never giving up, and if it'll stay together, I'm gonna win the race. For a long, long time, I didn't think I lost anything when Kel come on, because we was as good or better than me and Allison. So when you get in the good side from two people, luck plays a lot in it. Determination plays a lot. Kel was more determined than Bobby, but I'm not going to say that Kel was better than Bobby, because Bobby was a great race driver.
The Junior Johnson Cale Yarborough team won its first Winston Cup championship in 1976. What was that like for you?
Oh, it was unbelievable. You know, my whole adventure in racing made a tailspin. You know, from that point on until I quit, I couldn't do no wrong, because, you know, I'd won championships with Cale, and I was at the top of the ladder, and I knew what it took to get there, and I made sure I did the stuff to stay there.
What did it take for you all to win in 1976?
Well, you know, we've been close to winning a championship 2 or 3 times, and it just took harder work and more efficient stuff, like in the engines, better engines, and better chassis, and more hard work from the crew. And Cale, you know, he stepped up to the plate and, you know, took care of the car and won the races without gambling and stuff like that. That's what our success was, is we tuned our race team a lot to make sure that we got them championships.
Yarborough won his second consecutive Winston Cup championship in 1977, and then in 1978 he won a third. What did it mean to have a three-peat in this championship series?
Well, it was something that had never nobody done, and it's a big honor to us to be the first one to stretch it on out to 3 championships in a row.
In 1979, the Daytona 500 was televised for the first time. Tell us about that race, and also what happened after the winner crossed the finish line.
Hoss Ellington was a good friend of mine, and Donnie Allison was driving his cars. And Cale was faster than Donnie, and Cale was kind of, he thought Bobby Allison was Donnie's brother, and he was seeing more Donnie, and Bobby was trying to get together and race and beat him and stuff like that, and he got a little bit rattled with that. But Donnie come on the radio, and Hoss told Donnie that we was gonna try to draft by him on the backstretch, which is really what we was gonna do, because we had a faster car needed. And Donnie come on the radio and says, well, he'll never get by me. I'll wreck him before I let him win. And that's what he did.
And what happened after that?
Well, they got in a fight and stuff, and Hoss tore up his car, and they tore mine up. Neither one of us won the race, which is the stupidest thing I ever seen in my life. And when a guy comes on the radio and says that, it's no different than him having a gun and say, I'm gonna kill you if you make a step or something. It's so stupid is unbelievable.
There are some folks who argue that the fight was actually good for NASCAR because it brought it a lot of attention. Would you agree with that?
I think it brought attention because it brought the manpower out of, you know, you can't be pushed around in NASCAR. But, you know, I hear Bobby and Donnie talk about whooping Kel, but they didn't whoop Kel until nailed both of them, and the film shows that. But, you know, what's a fight? Let them brag about whatever they want to. It don't matter. It don't hurt nobody, you know. But I was very, very disturbed about somebody wrecking my car intentionally. I can't see Donnie. I talk to him and stuff, but I still think about why in the world would you be that foolish? If you can't win, do the best you can. Don't wreck somebody else because they got a faster car than you have.
Towards the end of the 1980 season, Cale Yarborough came to you and let you know that he was planning to leave Junior Johnson and Associates in order to have a less demanding schedule. Were you surprised by this?
No, because Cale was not dedicated like he was to start with. When he won the third championship, he was so around the racetrack. He wasn't that really determined type person that he was when I took him on to start with.
Soon after Yarborough's announcement, Darrell Waltrip came to you and asked you to hire him. How did you respond?
Well, you know, I was without a driver, and Darrell he was really out of a ride and stuff, and we need to do something, let bygones be bygones and go race together. We had a good race team. Waltrip, he's the only person I've seen that could put Dale Earnhardt in his place. Now he had a knack for Earnhardt. If he's there with him at the end of the race, Earnhardt was in trouble. And I couldn't say that about many of the other drivers.
Darrell Waltrip won the Winston Cup in 1981. You traveled to New York City to the Waldorf Astoria for the awards ceremony. What was that like?
Well, you know, it was, you couldn't have went no further up the ladder than New York and the Waldorf Astoria. It was just so mind-boggling. Here we are, we was in Daytona in a little old motel down there about to fall down with a championship, and here we are in New York.
Darrell Waltrip won his second Winston Cup in 1982. Was this an exciting victory for you?
It was. It was better than the first one. You know, you win one and you think, well, you know, if I don't win, this one's good enough. But the second race, it was a better race for us to win than the first one was.
Waltrip ended up winning the 1985 Winston Cup Championship. This was your sixth title in 10 years.
Well, you know, I had 6, but I really could have had about 12 if things had worked out. And since I got out of racing and stuff, I've learned a lot about what went on in the past and that caused me not to win. I should have won a lot more than what anybody's won, because things that happen in the sport and the manipulation of stuff and the things that I know cost me championships. So, but I'm satisfied with what I've done, and particularly death that we got championships like we did. But you know, you always hate it when you deserve it, but you don't get it. That's what it is. You know, sports have come a long ways. It's a better sport than it's ever been.
At the end of 1985, you received a very nice Christmas present from President Ronald Reagan. Tell us about what happened there.
Well, I had a friend that lived in the county that I lived in. He was from a little community called Trap Hill, and has a large liquor production place in the county, about one of the biggest. And he was in the politics side of stuff, and he was a liaison in Washington. And I went through Jimmy Carter's 4 years in Washington trying to get a pardon for what I had been convicted of, the liquor business, and never come close to getting it. And he kept working on it and talking to the president, and President Carter was a Democrat. This boy was a Republican, and he couldn't do anything with Carter. But when Reagan came in, he went to Reagan. Reagan immediately said, "Get me the paperwork and I'll give him a pardon." And he called me one day about 9 o'clock and told me to get on an airplane, come to Washington, and I'll pick you up at the airport, and we'll go to the White House and get your pardon. And we walked in the White House, and President Reagan was in the Oval Office. He came out and spent about a half hour talking to me about racing and you know, about the pardon and stuff, what it meant to, you know, me down the road, and he was very, very appreciative of being able to give it to me. So thought a lot of it, still do.
The pardon restored your voting rights. Was that important to you?
It was, but citizenship was more important. You know, when you're sitting there with a felony over your head, you can't vote, you can't do nothing. You're really not even a citizen of the United States. You know, and a lot of people don't care, but I do. I think we've got the best state in the United States.
Back on the track, the Charlotte Observer broke the story that Darrell Waltrip would be leaving Junior Johnson and Associates to race for Hendrick Motorsports. Did that surprise you?
Not really, but the reason it didn't surprise me is Darrell wanted to be the first driver to get $1 million. I don't know if Rick gave him $1 million or not, but you know, I couldn't afford $1 million driver, and I don't think Rick did either, because he didn't do nothing hardly. So it was out of the question. It was something I could not do. I didn't contest it or criticize him or nothing of that nature. Just get me another driver and go on down the road.
You ended up hiring Terry Labonte, who stayed with you for 3 years. When he left, you went with Jeff Bodine. What talents did these drivers have, and what attracted you to them?
Bodine was a good a driver as he was on the racetrack. And we won. The first year we won races and was a competitor that, had a chance to win a race every race you went to. Then for some reason or another, Bodine and the crew did not kind of get along for 2 more years. And I never could put the thing to rest that made it a top-notch race team for the last 2 years that Bodine was with me. But he was certainly capable of winning any race he entered. And it just was a bad deal on our side.
How about Terry Labonte?
Terry Labonte was absolutely a great personality and driver. I made more money with Terry Labonte than I did anybody I ever raced with.
When Jeff Bodine left the team at the end of the 1991 season, you hired Bill Elliott. Tell us about him.
Well, Bill, he was a great race driver. There wasn't no question about it. He's, a lot of people, he when he come into racing, he was the explosion right away, winning races and outrunning all the top-notch drivers and all that stuff. But and this is how good he was, we won like 4 or 5 races in a row with him, right off the get-go.
Elliott won the NASCAR season finale, the Hooters 500 in Atlanta in 1992. Even with that win, he finished second in the Winston Cup race to Alan Kulwicki. What happened during that race?
Well, our radios, about, I'm going to say 2/3 into the race, they either, one of the radios damaged all the rest of the radios, but the only person we could talk to was the spotter. I couldn't talk to Bill. Bill couldn't hear us. He couldn't talk to us. We couldn't hear him, and that kind of stuff. And when it come down to who led the most laps was going to win the championship, and Bill was set to win the championship because all he had to do was run one more lap, and he came in the pits. But he didn't know how many laps he'd led or what the situation was, and we couldn't talk to him. And most of the time, the drivers come in when you tell them to. You don't do that on your own, and it was just a whole big mix-up. Nobody's blamed for what went on, but the radios is what caused us not to win the championship.
In 1992, you were inducted into the North Carolina Sports Hall of Fame. What did this honor mean to you?
Well, it meant the world to me because, I'd done a lot in racing and stuff, but knowing what it takes to get into the Hall of Fame and stuff, it was gratifying that I got in when I did, because there was a lot more people out there that I kind of felt like deserved to go in more over top of me. But now I look back over it, and I'm a person that never brags about what I've done or nothing else. If I've done something great, it's fine with me. But I don't go around, sticking my chest out or nothing. It's just the way of life. And but when I look back over it, I think I deserve to be there.
At the end of 1992, you married Lisa Day. Tell us about your wedding day and about Lisa Day Johnson.
Well, she's a lady that growed up about 2 miles from me, and I've knew her all our lives and stuff, and it was a highlight of my life then, and it still is. We have 2 great kids, and have a great life, and it probably saved me from a lot of bad stuff along the way. We've had a good marriage.
Your son, Robert Glenn Johnson, was born on August 23rd, 1993. What was that day like for you?
I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. I was in the hospital with Lisa, and it's doing a C-section on her. And they had a towel between me and her. I was sitting there holding her hand and talking to her. And the doctor was taking Robert. And he says, Junior, you want to see your son? And I said, sure. And he says, stand up and look over the curtain. I stood up and looked over the curtain. Robert's head was sticking out of her belly. That was the cutest thing I ever seen. So when he was born, they took him and cleaned him up a little, and give him to me. Boy, I was on cloud 9. I had to take off down the hospital and people in the waiting room to show him what he was and how pretty he was and stuff. It was a new life for me.
Did becoming a parent change your perspective in any way?
Yes. It sure did. I see kids and stuff now, and some kids I see that's properly taken care of and stuff, and some I see is not, and it just breaks my heart when I see a little young'un that somebody's not looking after it like they're supposed to. It's a bad situation.
3 years later, your daughter, Meredith Suzanne Johnson, was born. Tell us about Meredith.
Well, I went through it with Robert and stuff, and when she was born, I enjoyed her per se more because I'd had the experience with Robert, and it was so exciting. I almost had a heart attack when I seen that little booger, and she was so pleasant and stuff compared to him because he was rowdy and stuff, and but I brag on them because they're mine, but I still think they're better than anybody else's. They're great.
In 1995, you ended up getting Lowe's as a sponsor, and you hired Brett Bodine to replace Bill Elliott. Tell us about this year, and at this time, were you thinking about retirement?
I had thought about retiring, but there was a lot of interest in Lowe's because it was a home company. They was right 10 miles from where I lived, their headquarters. I knew most everybody in it, you know, and I had drove for the people that started Lowe's. I was a good friend with Jim Lowe's, and he was the one that the name come from and everything else. It was almost like a family affair thing. And I thought I could race with him. Well, the CEO of Lowe's was a person that I couldn't get along with. He thought he knew everything, and he didn't know nothing about racing. He might have known something about running Lowe's, but he didn't know nothing about racing. So he put two guys with us. Every day they were supposed to look after the racing. Well, they was so concerned he was going to get fired if they didn't do everything that they could to tell me how to race and stuff like that. Never did really work out.
In the middle of the 1995 season, Brett Bodine offered to buy out your team. You accepted the offer. Was that a difficult decision for you?
It wasn't, because the team was so low at that time. It would tuck a, by not being the top, having the top driver and the top sponsor, having trouble with your sponsor. It was not going to be successful. So it gave me the best. I analyzed it every way I could. The best thing for me was to sell out and get out. That's what I did.
How had NASCAR changed in the 4 decades that you were involved with it?
NASCAR changed in some way, some manner, every year. And what I'm seeing it is things got better and better and better with NASCAR. But that leads up to it got more popular and popular and popular. So the racers gained, financially wise and knowledge wise and stuff, are right along with NASCAR. So it was a go forward deal with NASCAR and the employees that come in and supported it. And that's how it got to be the best sport out there.
Does it make you proud when you see the innovations, the trends that you started continuing to impact the sport today?
It does, but it don't get the credit that it needs. But I don't want no credit for what I did. I was better in the sport, and I was better in myself in financial ways and stuff of that nature. But the innovations that I brought into that sport, it was a big portion of keeping it alive, because somebody has to bring more to the sport than what NASCAR can do themselves, because they're regulators, they're not producers. And the individual teams has to be the producers, So I think this round of the factories that's been in the last 10 years, this stuff is just a great, great feat for NASCAR, because it has advanced in the 10 years more than it has advanced in the last 50. It's like they came in and just made it balloon. And the other years, some little something would come and show up, and it helped the sport a little bit. Then another little thing would do that. But this was a big deal. It's happened in the last 10 years.
A few years after your retirement, the track at North Wilkesboro closed. Was that a sad event for you?
It was for me and about everybody that had ever raced, because that was one of the management teams that had been a big force in NASCAR for that reason, but it was one of the racetracks that I think made the sport what it is. It, Martinsville, and places like that is what pioneered this sport to the point that it is today.
What do you think that NASCAR has meant to that region of North Carolina and to the entire state?
You can't measure it in dollars and cents and stuff, but it's unbelievable what North Carolina has contributed to that sport. And one way or sense, you could almost say, if it hadn't been for North Carolina, there wouldn't be no NASCAR. And right now, everything NASCAR is doing is sitting in North Carolina. All the car owners, all the race cars, a Hall of Fame, a racetrack, you know, the Charlotte Motor Speedway, and a lot of their offices is in North Carolina. But not only are they lucky, North Carolina's lucky too, to have a sport being run out of their state.
Do you ever think back to when you were a young man hauling whiskey out of Ingalls Hollow? And do you marvel at where that young man is today?
Well, you know, people tell me how fortunate I was, or how good I was, or whatever. And my comment to that most of the time, I've been a person that the good Lord gave 9 lives to. So, you know, I didn't have any fear or nothing, and somebody was taking care of me. I know that.
In 2001, Dale Earnhardt died in an accident at Daytona. How do you assess Dale Earnhardt's legacy, and what impact did his death have on NASCAR?
Oh, his death on NASCAR was humongous, because he was, Richard Petty's famous for what he did. Earnhardt was famous for how he did it. It's a total different thing. And people like Richard Petty, they praise Earnhardt. And that's just the way it is. And because of his, I don't know, character type thing. You know, like he won a lot of races because of you can say better or different. He was a gifted icon that the sport needed and people praised him. And just like I said, they love Richard Petty, but they'll praise him.
Did you see that race in 2001?
No, I seen it on TV. I wasn't there. But I have my reasons to think that Dale Earnhardt at Darlington had hurt himself to the extent that part of that problem was still with him when he got killed at Daytona. And that's my feelings. I don't have anything to back that up, but I think because he came in the pits and he didn't have any use of his arms and stuff, and didn't know where he's at, that kind of stuff. And it was after he'd had a bad wreck at Talladega. So, and you would think that the doctors, if they, a lot of them drivers that hit the wall real hard, it stretched their spine in the back of their neck, and a real jar, a big jar will kill them because it breaks that spine. And Neil Bonnet was that way. Donnie Allison's that way right now. Ernie, he's that way that drove for Robert Yates. There's several of them out there that the doctor told them if you get a hard jar, you'll key. And I was at Daytona when Neil Bonnet was coming there driving, and he drove for me, and I was good friends with him. And my car was going out to test, and I was going to the truck to get up on top of the truck and watch it, and clock it. Met Neil walking down there, and I said, Neil, what in the world are you doing here driving? I said, you know that doctor told you that if you had a hard jar, it'd key. He looked me straight in the face, and he said, I'd rather be dead than not be able to drive a race car. And that's the last time I spoke to him. 30 minutes later, he's dead. And I always thought about that, and I connected that Salter with Dale Earnhardt. Dale either knowed or didn't know. Because I told him one time, about 6 months before he went to Daytona, I said, man, why don't you get out of that car? You've done everything in the world you could do. Put somebody else in it and go, run you a race team and stuff like that. He said, I'm going to do that after I'm 50 years old. I said, what's 50 years old got to do with it? He said, that's just what I've set my standard for. And everybody's got their own opinion. But I don't really think they played it over and over and over. He didn't hit that wall as hard as I thought that it would do what it did to him. I think he had a little bit of something that he didn't know about, or the doctors didn't know about, hanging on, that he had picked up somewhere else. But he had a tremendous bad wreck at Talladega just before that.
In 2006, your 1963 Chevy Impala number 3 was put on exhibit at the North Carolina Museum of History. Was that an honor for you?
Well, that was a special car that the fans got to see, because they hadn't met a Chevrolet. All the people that owned Chevrolets hadn't had a car that dominated the sport like them our cars did. And it's Fireball Roberts, Smokey Union had one, Ray Fox had one, and I had one with, Holly Farms, and we had one other car that ran some with G.C. Spencer. But for Chevrolet, they hadn't been in racing for a long time, and it dominated the sport. It was the killer of all killers as far as cars is concerned. And I won 7 races on my side of it and dominated the sport in that year. And there'll never be another car comes along that does that. So to have that car and have it displayed and have the reputation it's got, it's just unbelievable.
In May of 2009, your son Robert won the first race he entered and then went on to win 4 more races. When did Robert become interested in racing? And what do you think about your son getting involved with the industry?
Well, I was so high in the air when he won his first race. I didn't come down for 2 or 3 weeks. And then he goes back and he wins again, and he just keeps on winning, and never drove a race car in his life and stuff and all. But tell you the honest God truth, his school and racing is competing against each other. And he and his mama and me, we gonna put school ahead of racing. And that itself kind of hampers racing, because a sponsor don't want, they want you to put 100% into that racing if they're gonna sponsor you. And if we go with a sponsor, I'll do that. But I still want him to go to school. And he's smart enough to do them both. I don't know if he's willing enough to do them both. But he says he is, and he is doing it right now.
Why is it important to you for him to continue with his education?
More a thing of knowing what your education's worth. I didn't go to school until in the 8th grade, and then I got out. If I'd have went to college, I might have been teaching the college. And I'm smart enough to know that I stopped too quick. I got out of school too quick. Although I've been successful, but I've needed a good education a lot of time. And I can hold my own with most college education people, but it'd been a whole lot easier. And I know that for a fact.
You've seen accidents, injuries, and deaths. Is there anything in your life that has scared you?
I honestly don't think that I've ever been scared. I've been concerned and bothered by my feelings, but I don't know that I've ever been scared.
Few people can say that.
I know, and I've seen people that go off the deep end. They got scared so bad, but I never thought I'd ever get hurt in a race car, and I'm not scared of, like some people are scared to in health and stuff of that. scared and frightening, a lot of people can't separate them. But I have no fear of something happening to me, or I see something that could happen to me. I get scared and do something. It's just never been one of my weak spots.
You've been married now to Lisa Day Johnson for 19 years. What is the key to a successful marriage?
Trust, faith, and willing to give in. You're not right all the time, just some of the time. Take what's in front of you and put it in its place and go forward.
What values and lessons are you now sharing with your children?
Most honesty is trust, I think, is more important than about anything. Don't misrepresent what your heart tells you to do. Treat everybody like you'd like to be treated yourself.
What do you want your kids to know about your career and your life so far?
Well, I'd like for them to think that they had the best father in the world, and never ever think that I didn't love them every second of the day, or any thing that they do that I wanted to help them, or be the best father they could ever have. And I think me and Lisa both are in that with my children. So if they tell somebody we've mistreated them, it's wrong.
Let's talk a minute about religion. What role has religion played in your life?
Well, I'm not a person that, discards religion. I think, religion's a great thing, and people should live the best they can, or they think about religion one way or the other. But I do know there's a higher power than we are, so I try to live the best I can to make sure I'm on the right side when I go away from here.
You were famously called the last American hero. What does that mean to you?
At the time, I didn't think much about it. I thought, it's just a talking, but to have somebody to think you are a hero is unbelievable. But to announce it with a crowd of people that's involved is unbelievable. They couldn't lay anything else any bigger than that on me. And I don't know how I got that.
How do you want to be remembered?
That if I couldn't help you, I wouldn't hurt you. That's, I try to treat people like I'd like to be treated myself. I don't get that all the time, but I give it. I wouldn't, if I had to ask, if somebody had to ask me, what would you change in your life? I wouldn't change nothing, because I've had a good life.
Mr. Johnson, thank you again for sharing all of your time and your thoughts with us.
Thank you for having me.
That concludes our series of biographical conversations with Junior Johnson. For more information on this series, please go to our website at www.unctv.org/biocon. Thanks for joining us.
This program is made possible by a grant from the A.J. Fletcher Foundation as part of its ongoing commitment to the Biographical Conversations series. The North Carolina-based foundation supports social justice, public broadcasting, education, the arts, and human services throughout North Carolina. And the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting UNCTV.